Well, that's a noisy cherry. All right, so we're halfway there. It's week 5 of week 10. Louis Malle, a French filmmaker I had seen just a handful of films before this week, and now I've seen 14 total. 9 of which I watched these past 7 days, and 6 of those 9 were documentaries, and I hadn't seen any of his documentaries. And the documentaries are from, I'm out of breath, from this set that I got about 10 years ago that I've been waiting to crack open, and this seems like the perfect time. So I do want to say I watched these in order of shortest to longest, and what was interesting about doing that is that it kind of became like it starts off with, by going from shortest to the longest, starts off with Mal having the least amount of interviews and the least amount of narration to the most narration and the most interviews. So I just thought that was kind of interesting to point out. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry, folks. Anyway, let's rank them up, shall we? All right, so number 8 is Calcutta from 1969. This is a 99-minute documentary that was cut separately from Mal's 6-hour documentary, Phantom India. And that's kind of meta in a way, because the people that he documents in Calcutta are pretty much cut out of Indian society, and Calcutta was cut from Phantom India. I just thought that was an interesting little unintentional parallel there. But anyway, so the only reason I have this one so low is because it's so doggone depressing. Kolkata was such a mess when Louis Malle visited in 1969 that there was so much footage and he had so much to say about it, and that's why he separated it from Phantom India. Many people live in subhuman conditions off of slave wages if they're employed at all. But it's easy to of course blame, capitalism or colonialism. They're the two easiest scapegoats. But of course, the reality always is far more complicated and way more nuanced than that. And Louis Malle knows that, and he shows us and tells us throughout this documentary that the problems are very multi-layered and complex. We see, there's anti-industry policies, thank Malle. There's border changes, which cut off its massive jute industry. There's the relocation of the capital, which used to be Calcutta, and now it's Delhi. There are religious differences between the Hindus and the Muslims. There's mass immigration, mainly from refugees coming from East Pakistan, and there's social unrest, which turns off interest from foreign nations into the area, and etc. That's just kind of part of it. And Malle does try to capture some of Calcutta's beauty and some of its intrigue, and unfortunately, we're too disturbed from the stuff we had just seen moments before he does that to fully appreciate it. We're mentally too preoccupied with I can lift them off. We're too preoccupied mentally with seeing cow dung and sewage flood makeshift living quarters. There's homeless children digging through trash. There's homeless, disabled, and disfigured people being denied human decency. There's corpses on the street that passersby just step over nonchalantly. There are overburdened hospitals. There's stacks of garbage that hasn't been picked up for several months. There's leprosy colonies of biblical proportions. And there's violent protests. There's workers slaving away unnecessarily. And should I keep going? This documentary did cause some understandable outrage from the Indian government, I believe. They felt that Calcutta, the film, was just showing the worst parts of the city, thus not being fully representative of Calcutta as a whole. And I kind of get that. Naming the film Calcutta could make outsiders believe that, oh yeah, this must be what Calcutta is like everywhere all the time. But did the Indian government go too far in banning filmmakers from the UK from filming there? Yeah, that goes without saying. And it's also, I think, valid to criticize the film as exploitive and voyeuristic, considering that Louis Malle never calls for any assistance or awareness of the problems depicted. He never offers any of his own solutions, no matter how naive or simple they may be, nor does he let any interviewees, citizens of Calcutta, kind of give their 2 cents on what could be fixed and what could be done or be done better and how and all that jazz. And you can kind of decide for yourself if he should or should not have even bothered to do any of that. I think that's fair too, I guess. This is just a film just showcasing what Calcutta is like. The parts of it, I should say. The worst parts of it. And the worst parts of it are pretty gnarly, to say the least. I'm still giving it 3 out of 4 stars, though. Okay, and then number 7 is Alamo Bay from 1985. I say this all the frickin' time. There's a difference between based on a true story, right, in quotes, and inspired by a true story. To me, based on implies that, hey, this stuff really happened and we're showing you what happened as accurately as we can. So there's some sort of accountability that should be held when you do that. Now, opposed to inspired by a true story, that's just kind of like acknowledging that something somewhat similar happened once and you're not trying to tell the truth of the story. It's just, you're kind of just covering your butt so nobody can sue you. And that's fair. And Alamo Bay falls into the former category when it should be in the latter category. Now, it's rooted in truth. There was an incident in 1981 Texas, in Corpus Christi, I believe, of the KKK showing up to intimidate and scare Vietnamese fishermen so that the white fishermen can have all the shrimping to themselves again in the bay. So some of the details are accurate, but for example, none of the characters are founded on real people. And of course, it escalates things to an extent that didn't actually happen. And speaking of what really happened was awful and terrifying enough that it doesn't need to be diluted or over dramatized to this extent, this much fictionalization. The truth, the real story, could make for a equally, if not more, powerful film on its own, But that's not the only problem. I still thought the movie was just kind of heavy-handed and over the top in dialogue and in plot and in some supporting performances. But overall, it is a well-intentioned, well-made film. There's decent visuals, an effective score by Ry Cooder, Malle's nuanced approach to the material, on-location shooting, and solid performance from the main cast. I still say it's probably underappreciated and underrated. If you do check it out, do watch it on Amazon because the restored version on there looks great. So yeah, I'm still giving this 3 stars out of 4 with all my caveats. All right, and number 6 is Place de la République from 1974. I wanted to do this very idea twice in my life. Once when I was living in Chicago at Daley Plaza or Grant Park, and again, when I was living in Seattle at Pike Place Market or the Space Needle. What I wanted to do, and at both these times, I did not know of this documentary's existence. When I was in Chicago, I didn't even know who Louis Malle was, period. When I was in Seattle, I did, but I didn't know he made any documentaries. Now, my idea for either one in Chicago and Seattle was to go up to random strangers and ask each of them the same specific question and inquire more about them from there. In Louis Malle's film, he goes up to random strangers and asks them what they're up to, basically, in hopes he can learn more about them just by asking that. Now, this was my most anticipated film of the week by him that I wanted to watch, but unfortunately, as interesting as those people are and what they have to say is, Louis Malle doesn't really get that much else from them. There's not a whole lot. Occasionally somebody will say something poignant. Occasionally somebody will tell a compelling story. But overall, what we really just end up learning about them is what they did or do for a living, where they're from, and where they live. Like, we just learned small talk stuff, basically. I wanted to learn something more deeper and profound about these people and their experiences and the place. So I didn't mention the place. So this is Place de la République. It's just a square in Paris. So it's a very limited area that Louis Malle just hangs out and asks people passing by. And that was kind of my idea as well at Daley Plaza or Grant Park or Pike Place Market and in the Space Needle. I'm just staying in that little area and just ask who I feel like asking the question. There is a brilliant moment that does happen in this film that made it get the rating that I've given it, and I'm tempted to even give it a higher rating just because of this one scene alone. I put scene in quotes because it's a documentary. He has a young blonde woman kind of play around with the audio equipment and the camera, and I thought that was kind of charming and endearing, and he even lets her do a few interviews herself. And it turns out she's quite a natural at it, and ironically, she asks way better questions than Louis Malle does. What's also interesting is how little people, I guess, had to do back then and what little rush they were in, because anytime Malle was talking to somebody, a little crowd would form, especially around the old lady who, understandably, is telling a story about how she escaped Nazi Germany. And the camera will just look at people that come by and stop and listen. And yeah, Louis Malle's camera, whoever it is, whether it's him or somebody else, always knows what to look at. And that's true for like all these documentaries. They have a good eye and feel and instincts for what to show and what to look at, I should say. Anyway, what I appreciate about this more than anything is Louis Malle shows himself asking people their permission to shoot them, and he shows himself asking how they feel about being filmed. That's just something I would have thought to leave on the cutting room floor, but I guess that's why he's Louis Malle, and I'm just a failed filmmaker looking at you on the internet talking about movies on the internet. 3 stars out of 4. Number 5 is Phantom India from 1969. This is that massive documentary that Malle cut Calcutta from. It is 6 hours, but it's split into 7 specific parts, so you don't have to watch it all in one sitting. I think I took about 3 sittings to watch. The reason it's so high up on this list is not necessarily because like I enjoyed it so much and loved it or whatever, but because I respect it more than anything, because it's pretty comprehensible and quite thorough. Now, I know it's impossible to cover and explore and understand in full any country, but Louis Malle gives it a good go when it comes to India. He goes in without any itinerary. They don't have a plan. There's no motive in the filming of the movie. They just let chance encounters determine the movie for itself, I guess. And I thought that was a great way to do it. He goes into, there's like I said, 7 specific parts. There's one on the religions. There's one on the politics. There's one just on the idea that they're filming there. There's one on the future. There's one on the caste system and so forth. And the outsiders on the fringes of the society and whatnot. And he doesn't, like, I don't want to get you the idea that he's talking the entire time, like, you know, Richard Attenborough, or anybody like that. He is not afraid to let images speak for themselves for an extended period of time here and there. I will say I could have done without the 10-minute sequence of dogs and vultures shoving their entire heads up the dead butthole of a dead ox, ripping its guts out to eat. I could have done without that. Thanks, Louis Malle. I would not hesitate to recommend this to anybody who's interested in India. I would not hesitate to watch this again if there was somebody I knew that was interested in India that I could show this to. It is pretty great. It's one of the best documentaries of its kind. It's straightforward, but like I said, I'm going to say it for the 3rd time now, very comprehensive and thorough. It's probably the best documentary on India, but I haven't seen that many, so take that for a grain of salt. 4 stars, I'm still giving it. That's our first 4 stars, so all the rest are 4 stars. All right, number 4 is In the Pursuit of Happiness from 1986. This is a documentary Louis Malle made showcasing immigrants in America from all over the globe. There's Cambodians, Cubans, Egyptians, El Salvadorians, Greeks, Indians, Laotians, and Mexicans, and Nicaraguans, and Pakistanis, and Russians, and Vietnamese, and West Africans, and people from West Indies. I don't know what they're called. West Indians, I guess. And they live and he shows them people from those groups who live all over the country. So there's people from California, Florida, Nebraska, New Mexico, Texas, Washington, D.C., and so forth. He goes all over the place. It's hard to believe, but there is no agenda. There is no message, no motive in the making of this movie. Although Malle certainly has his opinions, I'm sure he keeps them to himself. He's not interested in preaching, and I I'm so thankful for that. There are no judgments even in the section on illegal immigrants, but the movie is mainly focused on legal immigrants. You can relax, boomers. There does seem to be a huge difference in attitude between immigrants at this time in 1980, what did I say, 6, and in immigrants today in 2025. Here, in this film, every single immigrant is happy to be in America and they love America. The children of these same immigrants are happy to be in America and they love America. Now, it could just be the nature of media, but these days it seems like not many immigrants are happy to be in America and they're not thrilled about America, especially the children of these immigrants. And there's a constant flow of interviewees, immigrant interviewees Malle talks to throughout this documentary, which kind of parallels the constant flow of immigrants actually arriving in this country every day. And since Malle has no preconceived notions that he wants to convey, he allows you to find that alarming or to find it beautiful. And I appreciate that. 4 out of 4 stars. All right, number 3 is Humane. I'm not French, so I'm probably not saying that right, from 1974. With absolutely no interviews and absolutely no narration. There is no agenda whatsoever, and there is no posturing whatsoever. Just a camera and people putting together cars, then selling them. Louis Malle did just like he did with And the Pursuit of Happiness. He allows the viewer to come up with their own conclusions and their own feelings about what they see. Does the manufacturing and selling of cars fascinate you? Great. Does the manufacturing and selling of cars reveal to you man's capabilities? Great. Does the manufacturing and selling of cars show you the soul-sucking nature of assembly line work? Swell. There's something for everybody. The lack of grandstanding and lack of message, its lack of interviews and lack of narration, as well as its name, real human in English, all play together to provoke such varied perspectives. I like to see the process of things without commentary. I think it's impressive, the machines and processes that we see here that man can create and has created. I think it's pretty terrific that there's work for people with a certain kind of brain, but I also see the dehumanization of a routine line of work like this. I appreciate films that just I guess at the end of the day, I really appreciate films that let viewers interpret things for themselves and come to their own conclusions and opinions and so forth. And Louis Malle finds a pretty good vehicle for that with a car plant factory in France. Okay, number 2, folks, is God's Country from 1985. Truthfully, this could be interchangeable with number 1 on any given day, but God's Country is a great documentary that'll keep you smiling for most of the runtime. On his way to the Mall of America in Bloomington, Minnesota, to make a documentary on giant shopping centers in the United States, Louis Malle was distracted by an 85-year-old lady's garden while passing through a town called Glencoe, Minnesota. Rather than to continue to make that mall documentary, he scraps it on the spot at the last second and follows his instincts to make a documentary about this town. And thank God he did. Bankers, business owners, farmers, gas station attendees, lady softballers, lawnmower enthusiasts, lawyers, nursing home employees, local playwrights, nursing home employees, reverends, and Vietnam vets. These are all some of the people that he interviews in this town of 5,000 people. They're all generous and jovial and optimistic. And however, in the last 10 or so, 15 minutes, Louis Malle comes back after 6 years in 1985. So everything that was before was from 1979. And when he comes back, they're less generous. They're just as generous, but they're less jovial and less optimistic, but still so. And that's mainly because in 1985, it was the height of the farming crisis of the 1980s. And seeing as Glencoe, Minnesota was a independent, family-owned farming town, they were hit and smacked around pretty particularly hard. And And for the first time in all these documentaries, Louis Malle makes two statements, one political and the other societal, but both are done by proxy. So the first one's made by a farmer friend he made in 1979 while Republican, blames President Ronald Reagan for the agricultural depression. And the second one is made, the societal one, by another friend made in 1979 who is a lawyer by day and theater actor by night who blames greed. Little did he or Louis Malle know that the greed they were talking about in 1985 was just getting started. So yeah, I gave that 4 stars. And number 1, Vanya on 42nd Street from 1994. This was Louis Malle's final film. Again, this could be interchangeable with God's Country that I just talked about. The reason I put this one first is because it's play-based, and I'm a sucker for play-based films or films that feel like they're play-based. Now, it could be argued that Vanya on 42nd Street is a documentary, and it could be equally argued that it's a narratively meta film. So, aside from 3 very brief scenes of chitter-chatter, the whole entire film is of the real cast putting on Anton Chekhov's play Uncle Vanya in the same abandoned theater that's shown in the film. And everybody goes, in those 3 scenes, everybody is going by their real names. So Andre Gregory is Andre Gregory, Julian Moore is Julian Moore, and Wallace Shawn is Wallace Shawn, so forth. And I don't think those scenes were scripted. It feels pretty natural if it was. So more power to them if it was scripted. But the whole the whole movie is basically just the play. I mean, those chitter-chatter scenes are probably 3 to 5 minutes of the whole film. In an effort to prove just how good Chekhov's play is, Louis Malle has none of the cast members are wearing costumes. They're all in their regular street casual clothes, and there's minimal props and minimal sets. And this is all just to prove how good the play is. And he succeeds. You never once question the wardrobes. You never even notice the lack of props. What Malle and the cast are trying to do here is let the characters and the story speak for themselves. And they succeed. So there you have it. That's my ranking of 9 Louis Malle films that I watched this last 7 days. I'm always curious, what is your favorite Louis Malle film? Mine is My Dinner with Andre, which I'd seen long before this. If you want to find out who next week's filmmaker is, you know what to do. You know what to do, you mother... I don't want to say it. I'll say it. Just like and subscribe.
Why are there so many movies?